Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission: to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edifications, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Oh, Elkins Movie Club. It's Elkins Movie Club. Elkins Movie Club. It's Elkins Movie Club. Live from Ralston Days, and might I say, we're sitting in a beer garden.
We are.
And we were lacking something, Nick.
What?
You and I, we were lacking something.
What were we lacking in the beer garden, John?
Well, we had
me. Are you lacking me?
No, we weren't lacking you.
Oh.
But thanks to awesome friend of the program, Pedro, and his sister Tina, who works here at Ralston's Liberty First Credit Union Arena, we have our first beer. And so we get to crack the first beers of Ralston Days.
Oh, look at that.
But I'm not going to crush this like Quint did in the movie Jaws. Kent Wolgamott, Lincoln Journal Star. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well here. I don't, however, have a cooler sitting near me.
No cold beers for Kent right now.
Good news, he's at home. We were hoping that Michael Severe could join us because this is his favorite movie, or one of his favorite movies.
Yeah, he texted us last week when we made the announcement that we were doing Jaws.
And he did have an interview. He did some work stuff going on, so he might still be busy right now. But either way, we'll do this in his honor. But the movie pick this week was Jaws. And Josh, this was your pick, the 1975 horror classic.
Yep. I figure we'd do it as the summer comes to a close. Football season has officially started. Though John pointed out last week, next year is the 50th anniversary, so maybe we should have saved it. No worries. It's set on the fictional New England town of Amity Island. I mean, look, you know what Jaws is about. There's a shark attack. People die. The mayor makes really bad decisions. It's really, though, Kent, I didn't watch the movie in full for the first time until 6 years ago. And so I was surprised at how it's like two movies. There is all of the island stuff and whether or not they should shut down the town around the 4th of July. And then there's obviously all of the boat stuff and the relationship between those three characters as they try to take down this shark, but they also deal with grief. They talk about World War II and all sorts of things that they have gone through. A very good scene of people pretending or maybe not pretending, depending on what footage they used, to be drunk. And they're dealing with the shark. Many people have called it, the first summer blockbuster. Came out in 1975. Really cool to get a chance to watch again. I'm interested to see what Nick thinks about this one, Kent, given the little tease he gave us earlier. But for a movie that's almost 50 years old, I think that it holds up incredibly well. I think the pacing of this movie, that was the thing that I wanted to pay attention to most this time. I thought the pacing of Jaws was really, really good. And there just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of downtime in this movie.
For a 2-hour movie, it really goes. It's actually kind of, well, there he is.
There's
Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hello. Sorry about that. Interview ran long.
It's actually a classic sort of 3-act film. If you the part on the boat is both kind of part of the second act and the third act. The first part is, okay, we get up, you show all the denial and all, and develop the characters early. Then you have the 4th of July scene, right, where the shark comes. That flips it into the second act. And then the actual conflict with the shark that lasts 35, 40 minutes is the third act, right? And that's kind of classic movie structure. And what they did with it was this book doesn't, this is not the book, okay? I mean, they say, oh, it's based on Peter Benchley's novel, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it got rewritten so many times and kind of flushed away much of what made, you know, like there's an affair in the novel between the chief's wife and, is it Hooper? One of
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and that's in the novel. It's not in the movie, right? So Spielberg made this Spielbergian picture, right? It's the first one he did. And because of that, he knows how to, he was 25 maybe when he made this movie. And so there are a lot of stuff in that he did with that you would go, and a more experienced person wouldn't have done, like they filmed all the ocean stuff on the ocean. That's insane. Okay. That's really insane.
And added a ton to the budget and pushed the development back several weeks.
But what he did do was tell the you sort of see his way of telling stories come out. This is the first one that he was really able to do that. And so it's the 3 acts, but it's a very well told story. And they cut everything else, cut everything like the stuff I was talking about out of the novel to make it so it'll go, right? So there's not a 15, you know, the longest speech I think in the picture is when Robert Shaw is
U.S. Indianapolis.
Yep. Here we go. He knows his movie. Isn't that the longest? That's the longest speech in the whole movie, I think.
And if you look at it, the way they did it about 5 or 6 times. It didn't go well. They actually gave him something to drink. He got a little drunk and then did it perfectly once he got drunk. Couldn't do it sober, but did it perfect once he got drunk. Yeah, it was just Richard Dreyfuss is in one of the many documentaries I've watched on it. He talks about how they had to get him a little drunk and then he nailed the speech. It added some stuff to it as well. He knew it because he was a World War II guy, so he knew the history of the Indianapolis, so he nailed it. But can I ask you a classic question?
Sure.
Does she get naked? The answer is yes.
Yeah, like right away too.
Well, the shark does.
Yeah, instantly.
That speech, it's so epic.
Yeah.
And I think it does such a great job because this movie, I think one of the things I like about it is the balance between horrific and almost whimsical to serious to a little bit comedic. And that whole scene where this group of guys, very different backgrounds, different people, Hooper, they basically all just had met each other, a couple of days before.
Yep.
And how they're bonding over war injuries and they're having a good old time and they're singing along. And then it immediately just turns on, oh, I see you got a tattoo. You got the tattoo removed. What's that about?
Was it Mother?
And yeah, Mother. And they laugh. And then immediately Robert Shaw says, oh, that's the USS Indianapolis. And it just gets deathly quiet.
Yeah.
And Hooper says, you were on the Indianapolis. And the way it just changed from this, good time, guys getting drunk on a boat scene to this epic. I love that story. It is so, because that's how I first learned about the USS Indianapolis was that speech in the movie. I'd never known that story until watching Jaws.
Rob Nyer and I, for years, would talk about they needed to make that movie. And then they finally made it. They put Nick Nolte in it. It's one of the worst movies I've ever watched in my entire life. They made a movie about the U.S. Indianapolis and completely ruined it. It could have been great. And they just made a horrible movie with an actor who shouldn't have been I think he plays the Admiral in it or he plays somebody in it. It's a brutal movie. Should have been good.
Michael, what is it about this movie that has it towering over every other movie?
Well, one thing for me is, I was seven, so I was just 6 to 7 years old. Saw it that summer. My dad was in the hospital, and I was staying with some people in a little place called right outside of Quakertown, Pennsylvania, Easton, Pennsylvania. It's where Larry Holmes is from. And they cleaned movie theaters at night. And so they couldn't leave me at home. I was a little kid. I stayed with them. They took me and would leave me in the movie theater, and I could watch movies. And that's how I saw Jaws. as a little kid sitting in the theater, roughly by myself watching it. And it just grabbed me. And there's so many, I mean, from the thing that actually brought them together, John, it's what brings the mini guys together. It was the injuries. It was the scars, talking about the scars you have in your life and how that unites you with other men. And that's what really started bringing them together. Everything from the kid sitting at the table with, his dad doing a little hand stuff, trying to cheer him up. I mean, every part of that movie, whether it's the funny stuff or the serious stuff, the songs, all of that, it's a movie I just love. And like I said, I've seen it at least 36 times in the theater. And when it comes again to Alamo Drafthouse, I'll go again.
I think one of the other things in this, and it ended up happening by accident, because originally it's, I saw one thing that the producers, not Spielberg, but others thought, because they really wanted to show more of the shark.
Yeah.
They wanted more shark in the movie. There was actually a thought to trying to train a great white. And when I read that, I was like, "You've got to be kidding me! They're training a great white." So and there's a lot of stories about the issues with the mechanical shark and it breaking down. Kemp mentioned trying to shoot out on the ocean. Salt water would interrupt with the cameras, and people would be sunburned. It would just be a miserable experience. But it ended up being the best thing to ever happen.
Yep.
Because then Spielberg had to do the Hitchcockian, minimalist with the shark, and how you really don't see the shark until that epic moment where he's chucking the chum, and you ought to be coming down and chucking some of this bleep, and the shark comes up, and Roy Scheider backs up, and the epic line is he's backing into the cab of the boat saying, we're gonna need a bigger boat. And that minimalist really
plays so well.
It's such a better movie, because it's not as gory as it was at times. It could have been, and probably would have been, a lot worse had they been able to shoot it the way they wanted to.
And John Williams music,
great score,
makes the movie. And Ken, one of the most controversial parts of the movie, I think you know what I'm talking about. They're out there shooting at dusk, and there's 2 shooting stars that happen above the boat, and they get it perfect. And people are like, oh, they obviously set that up. They faked that or whatever. There was no digital technology out there. They just got lucky and got 2 shooting stars and put it in the movie.
Yep. They were just in the right place at the right time. There's no digital thing in there.
That's right. Exactly.
Nada, right? Digital didn't exist. We're talking 1974 they made this.
Yeah.
The only computers in 1974 were those giant UNIVAC and IBM things. They weren't using them to make movies.
Yeah.
And the other aspect of this was, along with going with what you're saying, because it was all it's so realistic, right? I mean, some people have said, oh, the shark looks kind of cheesy today, right? You can tell it's not a live shark. Actually, it works better. Can you imagine? Oh, we're fighting this computer generated.
It'd look horrible.
It'd look horrible, and it wouldn't be as effective. And so this was really good old school style action filmmaking on one level, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of which, she who opened the film,
Terry,
is actually a stunt person.
Yeah.
Who said, sure, I'll do it. She didn't care.
You know what she's best known for, right, Kent? The Lion and the Girl. So when she was like 73, 74, she was doing this stunt, and I'm not joking. She rode on the back of a water skiing lion without her top on, and this picture gets taken of her topless, and it ends up in Penthouse, and it becomes this big thing. And when they were thinking about that scene, I don't know who had seen it before, but they were like, hey, remember that? And they had her do the scene, and they beat her up. They dragged her around to make it look more realistic. She got bruised and all beat up in the scene.
Yep. But, would they do that today? No. Right.
No,
I'm just saying, you see all these things that come from back in sort of that was one of here's one of my personal theories.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the movies at the end of the second golden age of Hollywood, right? You have the first one back in the 40s and 50s. And then you have this late 60s to late 70-ish, early 80s at the latest, where you had Spielberg and Coppola and Lucas and blah, 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 all these people revolutionized Hollywood and the way movies were made and made all these great movies. And then this movie was one of the things that got the bean counters back in charge at the studios, because they saw all the movies they could make. And now we have suffered from that for 40 years now.
Yeah. The summer blockbuster. It invented the summer blockbuster, which then they kept trying to copy over and over again.
Over and over and over. Yeah. And just for comparative purposes, I did look this up and actually found the number. They opened this on 407 screens.
Oh, wow.
So that was not, in our minds today, 407 is nothing.
Yeah.
Back then, 407 was probably twice as many as any movie had opened on, because the releasing was, you release it in New York and Los Angeles and wherever, Chicago, blah, blah, huge markets, a few screens, get reviews, build it on word of mouth, don't do the big television advertising or anything. This movie, they had to have known what they had, right? The Universal did. Because otherwise they wouldn't have spent the money.
Yeah.
But this is the first one with the massive television ad and the quote wide release. And it worked. And then the next year came Star Wars, which kind of missed out of the gate, but then very quickly, did the whole, we're going to expand to 500 screens or whatever it was. And then away you go.
I love the Richard Dreyfuss story. The fact that he thought the movie was going to suck, so he didn't do any of the promotion. Like, he's like, I'm not going to promote this movie. This movie is going to be horrible, and just moved on and did his next movie, which I think wasn't close. And whatever the next movie was, he just moved on to that, and he didn't do any promotion. And then later, people are like, this movie's great. And he goes, what? Really? Making it sucked. It's a good story.
And he even got nominated for like a BAFTA award for acting.
Yep.
Right? And he thought the movie was terrible. The other hilarious Richard Dreyfuss thing is the reason he did this movie is he had just finished The Apprenticeship of Judy Kravitz, right? Which is a really good movie, but he thought it was bad and he thought he was terrible and he thought he'd never get hired again. And he got this offer before that movie opened. So he took this offer to guarantee he'd get at least one more movie.
Crazy.
Well, there's one person in this whole group that has never seen this movie, and I've been waiting to hear what Nick had to think on first viewing of a movie that is almost 50 years old.
So I've been trying to figure out how to organize my thoughts because I have many of them.
Oh, God.
The first thing I would like to say is I think both pop culture and Shark Week have ruined this movie for anybody of my age if this is your first time seeing it.
Really?
Because I say pop culture because I've seen this movie referenced everywhere my entire life.
Yeah.
Right? And then you see these references enough, so then you start to get an idea or a vision in your head of how those references are performed in the movie. So then you kind of have it in your head how it goes. Shark Week has ruined it because this is tied to pop culture. Sharks have been such a major part of pop culture because of this movie that I've just learned about a bunch of things about sharks, and I can't suspend disbelief enough to make me scared of the shark in this movie. At the time, in 1974, I'm sure it was scary because I don't know how in pop culture sharks were.
It was not.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
It was
People
not.
stopped going to the beach. People literally stopped going to the beach.
Yeah, my mom.
Yes.
So that was the thing that I remembered, Michael, before I ever saw this movie, was hearing the story of my mom seeing this one summer and how everyone was scared of going swimming, even in pools. Like it scared the crap out of them.
Out of everybody.
There was a moment. This would have been in '76. We were getting ready to leave for a fishing trip to Minnesota, but Grandpa and my dad wanted me to practice fishing in the Fremont Lakes. So we're fishing. We're just casting. We're just, just horsing around. Nothing serious. I ended up catching this little bluegill, and I reel it in, and the bluegill comes up the pole, and it freaks me out, and I turn around, and I run up the bank, carrying the fishing pole with me, meaning that the fish is getting drugged behind me.
Yeah.
because of Jaws.
Yeah.
That's how it was. So, Nick, your point is very valid. For us back then, for Michael and I, for Kent, it's different because we didn't have Shark Week. You know, National Geographic, there weren't a lot of things on sharks. They were very mysterious. We knew about them, but they were a very mysterious creature. But now we got shark shows all the time.
We're oversaturated with shark knowledge.
I agree.
So that was part of it. And then the other part is because this movie has been so ingrained in pop culture between all the quotes and references and everything, I've seen all the good parts of the movie already, but parodied. So then when I saw it in real life, it's like I've only got to experience half the movie, even though it was my first time seeing the whole movie. And the parts that I did experience for the first time is the character interaction, but I didn't get the feeling of seeing the shark for the first time or seeing.
Did Ben Gardner's scene, did that make you jump? Ben Gardner's head popping out the bottom of the boat?
Oh man, it gets me.
I laughed at it.
Okay. That scene still, when I go to the theater, they always ask people who is seeing this for the first time, and everybody in there who are Jaws fans watch that person for that scene. And every time they jump, drop their candy. I mean, everybody always gets startled.
See, and I liked that. I made a note of that scene because was that one of the first uses of a jump scare in a movie? Is that the start of jump scares? Was that scene?
I don't know. A lot of. When did Dial M for Murder come out, Kent?
In the early 60s.
Yeah, and so that probably is the first one, if I had to guess.
What took me out of that scene was there was a sound effect when the head came out.
Oh, yeah. There was, definitely.
I really liked the sound design of that scene up until there was just that random sound effect. And dead.
Yeah, reverse it.
It took me out of it. That being said, because I knew even how the shark died, I knew that. But the story that, what's his face? Mr. Shark Hunter, what's his name again?
Quint.
The story he told, I knew of the story, but I never heard the full monologue. I never knew the exact story. That part of the movie was the most compelling, 2.5 minutes?
Yeah.
Of a movie that I think I've seen in a very long time, and I was locked in for that entire story.
It's the way he tells it is perfect.
It was so good and so well done.
Yeah.
But it's not that I didn't like this movie. It was just hard for me to experience this movie because I feel like I've experienced it in pieces my entire life.
You know what it is, Nick? And to a lesser degree, it's my issue with Office Space. The reason why I never got into Office Space because I'd seen all the best parts and I'd heard all the lines, so it didn't resonate with me. And so I think what you bring up about Shark Week and all the other stuff is very valid because 1975, like I mentioned, sharks were very mysterious, creepy, scary, almost prehistoric characters.
Yeah.
A lot of it. For people, especially like Michael and I, who were 6, 7, 8 years old at that time, man. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing, the poster of the movie showing the woman swimming out of the ocean.
Great poster.
Amazingly abnormally large shark with these giant jagged teeth. It's one of the best movie promotional posters of all time.
It's funny because the other deadly fish in the water was the barracuda, and then the piranha, and of course the orca. And they tried to recreate this with all of those fish. And even though the orca movie was pretty good, they couldn't capture it again because the shark is just scarier. It's just the teeth and the way it reacts and the eyes rolling back, those like a doll's eyes. It's just, for whatever reason, it's the perfect villain. You know, I always say it's that and Vader are the two perfect villains in movies.
Which it's interesting because orcas are actually scarier in real life.
Oh, definitely. They kill sharks. They kill sharks. Yeah,
they do.
Yeah, in that movie, there's a scene where they find these sharks that have been killed, and that's how they figure out it's the killer whale that had done it. Yeah.
Well, there it is, Jaws. It's on Max. I'm like Michael. I obviously didn't have the same experience he did, but every time I find it on cable, I end up stopping watching. And it's not even because of the shark. I think it's because of the interpersonal relationships. I think these characters are very well played. Robert Shaw steals the movie for me. I love Quint. He's one of my favorite characters. I still like toasting people with, here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
Yeah. And Ellen Brody. Ellen Brody was sexy, bro. She came on that little negligee in the room, and I was like, oh, look at Ellen Brody. She's doing it. By the way, she was the wife of one of the studio heads. That's how she got the gig. But she did a pretty good job. And then she was in every movie, every one of the Jaws movies, except for, I don't think she was in 3, but she was in 1, 2, 4, and 5, I believe.
Hey, are any of the other Jaw movies watchable? Like
2 is good.
Yeah.
2 is good. Yeah, because Michael's in that, and the traumatic event that happens to him in 1 kind of comes back in 2. I think 2 is actually a pretty good movie. It's a silly ending, but it's pretty good.
Okay.
The rest of them, though, don't.
No, 3, the 3D with Louis Gossett Jr. and 4, The Revenge. Those are horrible.
Yeah, you just need the first one, honestly.
One more quick fun fact I discovered last night. So the 4th of July scene where they have that baseball game playing in the background.
Yeah.
I like what I can hear sports games played in backgrounds of old movies because a lot of the times they used actual games.
They did.
And I think it's fun to pinpoint that one. So out of curiosity, I looked up this one. That was a fake game, but Spielberg used the names of his sound guys.
Oh.
Awesome.
In that scene.
Yeah.
So the pitcher and the guy who caught the ball, I think, or hit the ball. It was a sound guy.
So it was a way to name drop. All right, so that's Jaws. If you want to catch it, it's on Max.